Welcome everybody, my name is Misty / Chronexia and this is Writing 101, How to Make a Good Story. I know this comes off as a braggy title, I don't mean it like that. A few years ago, about like 3 years, in 2015, I've been working on a novel called Chronexia and the 8 Seals. You guys might be familiar with the anime we attempted to make. It's still in the air, different topic, different video, we're gonna come back to it later. But the thing is, the story is something that I'm extremely proud of, and I've been working for the better part of a decade on the whole 3 books it's revolving around. Only the first one has been published yet. It's been self-published, and if you know a little bit about the writing media, it takes a lot to actually go out there and make some sell, because in a lifetime, a good book will sell about like 3,000 copies. So I'm hoping that these tips can kind of help you out if you're an aspiring writer, because I know for a fact that if I had these tips 10 years ago, it would have helped me a lot. The first tip that I want to cover is, it might be an obvious one, but there is no right or wrong way to write a story. I know there's some conceited writers out there and some elitists that are like, oh, you need about like 30% narration, 60% like description, and 10% narration for the perfect golden ratio. No, you don't. Or you have to have like over 400 pages of... No, you don't. There's like one famous story. It is 6 words long. And it goes like this. For sale, baby shoes, never worn. That's all you need. It's a full story. And it's 6 words, so really, when it comes to writing, you have to keep in mind 2 things. The form and the style. The form is basically the rhythm at which your story unfolds. You have a pacing that you have to go through. It can be slow, it can be fast, it can go in between both. But the thing is, you have to have a constant rhythm for both of them. And stuff like world building, character development, narration, it has to have a balance. If you have too much of one, you're going to tip over and you're going to bore your readers. So you have to find a good mix that will fit your form the best. The other thing is called the style. If I have to boil it down in one sentence, style is basically making every word count. Every stuff you have has a purpose, and if it doesn't have a purpose, then it shouldn't be there. And this brings me to my tip number 2. Find your own style. This is pretty important, but just like in drawing, everyone has their own styles, and everyone has their quirks they're gonna care about, like making big eyes or like a different type of shading for some stuff, and it's okay. Everyone has aspect they will want to care more about and other that they will want to leave behind. If you want to spend 3 pages describing a tree, like how the light shade through leaves, it's alright. If it's what gets you off, go for it. If you want to have your character skip an entire continent because you think it's not eventful, that's fine too. Everything is okay. Personally, like, I have a very graphic style, and the best way I can actually illustrate that is by using like a short story that I wrote like a few months ago. It was on Twitter, so it's really short. I'm gonna read it for you, and you'll be exactly able to tell like what kind of style that I have. Misty, my daughter, just figured out how to open food cabinets, and with her blinding lightning speed, she grabbed an open bag of rice. Time slowed down as she looked me dead in the eye and spilt the whole bag on the floor. Stone cold murderer. She laughed. I cried. The story is pretty simple, but what makes it so good? Like, did you laugh? Did you like it? What makes it appealing? Is it the fact that it's just 6 sentences? But the first 3 are what makes the whole story. The last 3 are simply like the delivery, the jokes. In this case, what makes the story so delightful is the contrast. You have blinding lightning speed for a baby. You have the ending, which is 3 quick short sentences. You have stone cold murderer. It's negative. She laughed. That's positive. I cried. That's negative. So it swings back and forth in a very quick fashion. And that, I mean, it's part of my personal style. I love short sentences because they're like 1-2 punches. They deliver quickly and you move on to something else. And as you'll keep doing more writing, you'll eventually find your own style. If you like to do rhymes, if you like to do iteration, There's no wrong or right way to do things. Now, these first few tips were more about like the skeleton of writing. Now we're gonna dive into the actual concept of a good story. Tip number 3 is about characters. When it comes to characters, there's two things, again, that are kind of paramount. You have character richness, which is having a character, and before you even write the first sentence of your book, is knowing what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what are their qualities. Did you just give them like, he's a white knight, he's a courageous hero, and then you move on to another character? Find flaws. What makes a character believable is that they're very humane, and the part of being humane is having a lot of flaws. Is he right-handed? Is he left-handed? No, ambidextrous is not cool, it's super cheesy, and you should not use it. I see that every time in stories. It's not cool, it's not cool. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of aspects that, like, does he have any phobias? Is he afraid of height? Does he have vertigo? Or does he not like spiders? These may not even come into play into the story, but it will give your character substance, and this is what a reader really seek out of people. And the second part is character growth. Does your character start off being like a complete tool, like a prick, and does he stay this way until the very end? Or by bonding with a different character, does he improve on his personality and eventually, I don't know, maybe sacrifice himself for the greater good? You see that a lot in a lot of stories because you want to be able to connect with someone that at first you didn't have a good opinion of, but via the events or maybe his interaction with other characters, he improves on himself. Tip number 4, you have to set a genre. A genre for a story is kind of a compass. It allows you to direct how you want things to unfold. Is it going to be an action-adventure? Is it a romantic drama? Is it simply a comedy? This will affect your pacing, is also going to affect where you're going to go. If you start off as a romantic drama, but halfway through the story you're lost in space slaying alien, you kind of lost focus at some point. So maybe you want to go back to your root, which was being a romantic story. I'm not saying you can't have a romance slaying alien. That's very possible. You can prove me wrong. But it's not something you would expect if the story starts in middle Brooklyn. Or maybe it does, I don't know. Everything works. Tip number 5. I see a lot of people who have to deal with writer's block. And for that, I never had to deal with that because I have always planned ahead. And if that's something I can recommend to you, plan ahead. Before you even start your story, you should know like who's the main characters, what are their like obstacles they have to overcome, and where are they gonna end at. And throughout the story, you're just gonna make your way to these various points. And a good way to just kind of have this figured out is just write your story in a bullet point format. Tip number 6. Don't be afraid to go back and change stuff. I know a lot of people think writing is kind of like on one path and is just from one point to another. You're allowed to go back and change a sentence, remove a complete chapter if you don't like it, or swap some stuff around. I know personally when I wrote like Chronexia and the 8 Seals, every chapters I would go back in the previous one and I would add a sentence or drop a hint about something because my story was about time travel. So if I wanted things to work out at several points, I needed to go back. And this is something you're allowed to do as a writer. You're allowed to go back. I mean, if the book is already published, it's a little tricky to come back and change something in it, but if you're writing a story that is still in the writing process, you're allowed to just remove stuff or just change it. Tip number 7, don't rush. You're not in any hurry to actually get it done. If it takes you 40 minutes with inspiration, that's fine. If it takes you 2 hours, that's okay too. Everyone has their own speed. Personally, I'm really good at doing dialogues, and then after that it's narration, and I'm worse at doing description because I don't really enjoy them as much as the other two. But they're still important in my story, so if I want them to work, I have to invest some time doing description. Some days I'm better at it, and other days I'm just not so good, so it's okay to put it on hold for like a week or so if you feel like it's not really coming out the way you want to. Tip number 8. This is something that I am really adamant about, is do some research for your story. Make it believable. It is really important that if you make an open heart surgery segment in your story, that you've seen the process or at least researched it a little bit. If you're smithing a sword but you don't know the process that goes behind it, it's gonna come off odd for some of your readers that are just gonna know about those stuff and be like, that just doesn't work. So take some time off, do your research. It's important to make your story stick together. Another thing that I see a lot for aspiring writers when they just start writing and they want to get into the good stuff, but they don't exactly know about how to do so, they use sentences like one thing leading to another. Don't do that. Readers hate cheap tricks, so if you have a compelling problem, find a compelling solution to it. You can't have like crazy events and then by the end just go like, oh, I don't really know how to end it. He woke up and it was just a dream. This is gonna rile up your readers a lot. So find cool, think outside of the box. It really put a new lights on a lot of things. Tip number 9. Don't give up. As much for the reader as this is for you, you need to find a way to keep yourself hooked in your own story. And a chapter in a cliffhanger if you want, or have a whole paragraph that's just in iteration, like, I don't know, David didn't daydream, his damage dot dragged the Dodecadron Druid down deeply under Diddy. I don't know what you can do with this, but this is just an example. Look, writing is hard. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It is not always easy. It doesn't have to be. It has to be fun to do. It's okay to have weaker moments in your story. Nobody stays at 110% the whole time. It has to be able to fluctuate, and this is gonna give your story a lot more form than if it was always constantly screaming. And finally, tip number 10. This is again somewhat of an obvious one. Try to have fun when you're writing the story. It's the most important one, and you're allowed to ask for feedbacks from people. If you have a friend that you want to pitch your idea to, do that. That's what I did with my book. I had a really close friend of mine and I was like, oh, I'm not sure what I can do about this segment, and it was like, oh, maybe you could have them fight X characters, or I don't know, maybe something is just gonna click when you're talking to someone and you're just brainstorming an idea off of them, and it's just gonna unlock you from that writer's block you've been dealing with. Because if I am to end on a final sentences for these tips, is this one. A story doesn't have to be perfect, you just have to like it. Personally, writing has always been kind of an escape for me. It's my best addiction. I know like a lot of people know about the anime we tried to make, and no matter what the reception was for it, it doesn't take anything away from the book that I wrote and how great I think it is. Because I spent the best part of a decade over the first one, and I'm having just as much fun as I did on the first day doing it. So I know I don't want this to come off as a shameless plug, but if you want to see my writing style more than just what I have in my videos, there's a link in the description if you want to buy the book. It is available in paperback if you have paper fetish, or if you just want to have it in digital format, it's available too. If not, then that's fine too. I didn't mean to make this video come off as preachy or braggy or anything like that. I just hope that it could help any aspiring writer out there who are struggling maybe with writer's block or just don't know how to get about to do things. I had a lot of requests on my Discord server for me to do a topic like that, so I hope it came out decent. If you guys want to check it out, the Discord is also in the description down below. So if you enjoy listening to me talk about my passion, feel free to leave a like. If you really hated it, you can leave a dislike as well. I won't mind it. I understand this is really not what the type of things that I normally do, but I really had a good time talking about it, and I could literally go on for hours. So I'm gonna try to keep it short. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer some of them in the comments below to the best of my knowledge. And until then, I'll catch you guys next time. I've been to the
dark turns, I've been on the wrong side, I've been ashamed. So many memories, you know I'd like to change.